Although it's 5 minutes from being afternoon, I'm going to start with good afternoon. We're going to work very hard to keep this on time, so we're happy to have all of you here. Welcome to the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations 2008 Nonprofit Awards Luncheon. I'm Barbara Snyder, president of Case Western Reserve University and home of the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations. Founded in 1984, the Mandel Center was one of the nation's first university-based programs focused on the education of nonprofit leaders and managers. Today, it is home to the newest building on the Case Western Reserve campus, a beautiful facility complete with a rooftop garden. If you haven't visited already, I hope you will do so soon. Today's ceremony gives us an opportunity to celebrate the contributions of nonprofit organizations throughout Northeast Ohio, as well as the individuals committed to their work. Of course, this is just one way that the Mandel Center encourages connections with our community. Our students work with organizations on strategic planning. Our seminars and workshops involve and inspire staff members and volunteers. And our faculty headline local events, such as this summer's City Club program on new approaches in philanthropy. The center's goal is to help develop and sustain nonprofit leaders so that their organizations have greater impact than ever. We are grateful for the support, the interest, and insights that you provide all year long. It is a privilege to be able to congratulate this year's award winners who stand as proud examples of the vital work of nonprofit organizations in our community. Again, thank you for being part of today's celebration. I would now like to introduce the executive director of the Mandel Center, Susan Egan.
Good afternoon, and thank you, President Snyder, for your comments. And thank you to all of you for joining us here at our annual Leadership and Awards Luncheon, honoring outstanding executive leadership and organization innovation. I would ask that you all feel free to enjoy your lunch as I provide just a brief history of the awards program. As you have just heard, the Mandel Center has, for the past 24 years, been an innovator in nonprofit management education. We have striven to set the standard and are proud of our over 700 alumni who are engaged in proactive leadership roles in the nonprofit community, locally, nationally, and internationally. The future for us is even more exciting now that we have moved in and are actively enjoying our beautiful new home on Bellflower Road. This building is already assisting us in growing and sustaining our tradition of building excellence in the nonprofit sector, and more importantly, perhaps, enabling us to increase our commitment to community service and research on behalf of nonprofit professionals everywhere. We are profoundly grateful to the Mandel family for their generous gift, which has made this building a reality. I would also like to thank and acknowledge the leadership of Case Western Reserve University for their role in making the building possible and for more than 2 decades of consistent and steadfast support for the center's work. The partnership between the university, business, philanthropic, and nonprofit communities has enabled the Mandel Center to develop one of the top graduate programs in nonprofit management in the nation. This luncheon is a particularly special occasion for the center, as it provides an occasion to honor what is central to our mission: excellence in nonprofit leadership. This ceremony was inaugurated by two of our graduates in 1995 and currently co-sponsored by the Mandel Center and by the Center's Alumni Association. The Leadership in Nonprofit Management Award was instituted to recognize the achievements of nonprofit leaders in Northeast Ohio. As a community, we can be very proud of their many accomplishments and the standards of excellence that our award winners have set. 2 years ago, our selection committee added a new category, the Organization Innovation Award, to recognize the achievements of an organization that has demonstrated its ability to use resources in innovative ways to achieve its mission. These awards are possible through the thoughtful work of a selection committee, which is comprised of local nonprofit leaders. This year's committee was chaired by David Abbott, Executive Director of the George Gund Foundation. Many of you are familiar with Dave's numerous contributions to our community. His talent, generosity, and sustained activities on behalf of the greater good in Northeast Ohio are widely recognized and deeply valued. A number of our selection committee members are here today, and I would like to ask them and Dave as their chair to please stand and receive our thanks. This lunch would not be possible without the sponsorship of many nonprofit organizations. And I would like to draw your attention to the screen off to my left, which recognizes those organizations that not only have supported this event, but are working every day to make our community and our region a better place. I invite you to enjoy your lunch, and we will be resuming with our program in approximately 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you would retake your seats, we will resume our program. I'm Dave Abbott. It's been my privilege to serve as the chair of this year's awards committee. And before we go on with the business, I want to add my thanks to the members of the awards committee for what once again was a very difficult task in picking winners from among so many outstanding nominations. It's always a tough job, but we really apply ourselves to it, and we are sure that you will agree with us that this year's winners are more than deserving. But before we get to the awards, we have a speaker we want to hear from, and I'd like to introduce her. You know, it's often said that nonprofits need to operate like businesses, and that is in fact true in a certain respect, that nonprofits certainly need to adopt smart and effective and business-like practices as they go about their work. And a national leader in helping nonprofits achieve that level of operations is the Nonprofit Finance Fund. And I'm happy to introduce Jennifer Pryce, the fund's Director of Advocacy and the head of their Washington, D.C. office. Her appearance today is especially timely because we're living through a pretty interesting time right now, a time when it seems like the entire financial sector isn't really behaving very much like a business. And the capital markets, as we know, are in turmoil. This is going to be something we are going to live with for quite a while, and the consequences are going to undoubtedly be profound and, as yet, not fully foreseeable. But I'm sure that nonprofits, in particular, are going to feel the consequences of the meltdown on Wall Street in a variety of ways. The loss of wealth of individuals and foundations, the fact that financial institutions themselves, often major donors to nonprofits, will be under, at a minimum, under stress that they had not faced before, and in some cases they are disappearing. And in fact, on top of that, we have what appears to be a massive diversion of government resources into bailouts and away from programs that many nonprofits and their clients rely on. So we're going to have to work through the consequences of this for some time. And so against that backdrop, the work of the Nonprofit Finance Fund is more important than ever, because it has been a leader in helping nonprofits develop their financing, in strengthening their financial health, and improving their overall capacity. I won't repeat Ms. Pryce's biography, which is in your program, but I do want to point out that she brings to the nonprofit sector extensive private sector experience, including working for Morgan Stanley in risk analysis and strategy advice. And Jennifer, I don't know if there's any connection between the two, but since you left, their risk analysis seems to have gone in the tank. So they probably wish they had you back, but we are glad that you're here with us today. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jennifer Pryce.
Thank you, David. And thank you to the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organizations, Susan and all our colleagues for bringing us together today to honor the exceptional talent in our field and to bring to the forefront finance and the relevance as it is today and its importance. In the wake of the current financial crisis, the topic of finance is ever so timely. I don't want to be a bummer and bring a downer today. So I want to bring these topics to the forefront so we could take them and integrate them with our organizations back home and let them be food for thought as we move forward through these times, but also through fruitful times that sure will come as well. But so timely is finance in the world and in our topics today that after meeting some of you last night, I returned to my hotel room and worked with my colleagues at NFF in preparing tips for a discussion that the Chronicle of Philanthropy is holding actually right now as we're here live online, called Weathering the Financial Storm. And highlighted in this conversation are the tips that I worked with my colleague and CEO founder of Nonprofit Finance Fund, Clara Miller. So I'm going to move off my prepared remarks actually and come back to them shortly, as I would like to share with you in real time as they're happening now some of the tips NFF is sharing and discussing with nonprofits across the nation as how we can weather this financial storm and be prepared. So tip number one, no need to get out your pens and paper. This will probably ring true to you. Review and optimize 3 critical aspects of your organization's financial assets. So cash deposit risk, especially if you have cash of $100,000 or more in one institution. Concentration investment risk, endowments, all the like. And concentration of revenue risk. Tip number 2, if a reliable revenue source seems questionable, consider ways to diversify revenue sources. But be careful, over-diversification, such as new and multiple lines of business, give rise to mission creep, may carry high entry costs, and frequently increase fixed costs, therefore increasing financial risk. And that is a mouthful, but at the end of the day, just be careful that we all stay true to our mission. Money comes and it can look attractive, but stay true to our mission in planning out our strategic decisions these days. And tip number 3, if the organization knows or suspects it will lose funding, make contingency plans for downsizing. Nonprofits frequently use furloughs, small across-the-board salary reductions, consulting arrangements to offset temporary revenue reductions. However, if funding looks like it's disappeared for good, consider partnering or merging with other complementary or similar organizations. But do be wary that partnerships could ultimately increase costs. So make these discussions as how you can come together and provide your services and to meet demand, but keep your cost structure in line. So in summation, indeed, unlike some of the sectors of our economy, in times of economic pressure, the work of the nonprofits is in demand, and for some, demand even increases. However, the impact of the services we provide to our communities is not measured only by increased output and growth of programs, but also quality and dependability of service. The sustainability of our mission, the ability to continue to provide quality services, is directly related to the strength of our infrastructure and financial capacity. So oftentimes, if you can think of a triangle, it's a good reference point of thinking of your mission sitting on top with your infrastructure and your financial capacity as the two other points of that triangle. And that it's a triangle that's striving to be in balance, equilateral on all sides, although the world pulls us in different ways. But finance in general is often not articulated in conversations with our peers when we go to conventions, conferences, sessions, and seminars like this. It's generally the programs that we talk about, not the money, yet it is the money that makes our programs possible. As leaders of organizations, we are continuing balancing money and mission. You may ponder the questions, is it a good idea to buy a space? Should I add or expand a program? Is it okay for a nonprofit to make a profit? And I will say yes over and over to that. Yes, yes, yes. But all these questions recognize you're moving through a process of balancing money and mission. As David indicated, I work with a nonprofit finance fund, and we have taken a leading role in exploring how finance leads to nonprofit success. And it has been our experience over time, and we've been in business nearly 30 years, lending, consulting, and doing other work, that the finance piece of our business is often neglected, as most of us did not enter this field to run a business, but to provide a service to our community. It is the mission which drew us to the work. And that is why that is respected in the sense that when I mention that triangle, it's on top. The mission is what drives us. And the two pillars underneath, infrastructure and finance, should be supporting the mission that we are engaged in. However, to be able to articulate our financial story, to communicate a compelling business-based case for support as well as a programmatic case, can support us in securing the needed revenue to fulfill our missions. To understand and articulate the true cost of our business allows us to make business decisions with our board members, with our donors, with those that love us and know us, not only on intuition, but also financial fact. And that is powerful. Oftentimes I'll see strategic plans that are fabulous in the way that they'll reach out and grow and touch people and communities, but they are lacking in numbers. How do we get there? What is the financial equation behind your strategic plan? So what is the economic proposition that leads us to have a nonprofit sector? Let's start at the basics and talk about why we're here, why we do what we do from an economic standpoint. First, the nonprofit sector exists to fill a gap or a malfunction in the for-profit economy. When those gaps are not filled, the civil society as we know it begins to break down. While there are doubtless many such gaps, here are three generic ones that I refer to. One, nonprofits exist to provide services to those who can't pay for them, shelter, food, etc. Two, we exist to provide services where quality make commercial operations problematic. Education comes to mind for me. If you put 205-year-olds in one classroom, you don't get quality outcomes. But therefore, if you change that proposition and bring 15 kids into a classroom with one teacher, it is usually unaffordable to most, and therefore you need government support to make it work. And three, do things where there is no predictable commercial financial return, like advocacy, like basic research and science. So looking at these underlying motivations of why we do what we do, the rules of money then become clear that they're different in our sector than the for-profit sector. And adding to the murkiness of the universe we operate in is that often conventional wisdom falls short of describing reality, all of which may lead organizations and funders to make strategic errors that undermine organizational effectiveness for decades. So there are many strategic choices that we consider over time. As our organization moves and grows, endowments might be one that we talk about with our board and our donors, We might look to earned income with our program managers as an opportunity to raise revenue. We might look to undertaking a partnership to come together and merge. But let's explore two that I often talk about, and that's owning property and growth. And let's talk about the conventional wisdom that surrounds those two decisions that we make as managers. And also, let's look at it through a financial lens. So owning property, the conventional wisdom is usually if you build it, they will come, right? Or investment in real estate is responsible investing. An organization I know well in Virginia finally reported a $400,000 operating surplus in this past fiscal year. This is the first time since 2001 when they ran their capital campaign and built their theater. Up until that point, from 2001 to 2006, they ran operating deficits from $400,000 up to about $1 million. And this is on an operating budget of $3.5 million. So it was a struggle. They came and they did, as I indicated, have their first operating surplus last year, but they're still carrying a debt load of $3.5 million that funded their $4 million facility. This is all to say that it may take a while before they come. Patrons, contributors to a new facility. Facilities are a big growing up for a nonprofit, and proper planning is imperative. Before considering a new facility project, it is important to put the time and analysis into planning, not only estimating project budgets and contingency, but also projecting future operations, using sensitivity analysis to estimate best worst case scenarios and capital structure that can support the early losses when you open. But even the most diligent planning cannot foresee everything. We see this time and time again, which argues for healthy reserves and net assets, or a healthy capital structure to weather these planned for projects. Some organizations have the choice to avoid owning real estate, others do not. What this means is that those who own and those contemplating owning need to understand the dynamics of ownership and the burdens it places on that organization. Let's look at a theater. What business is it in? Theater productions or renting real estate? This is an interesting question when you start to unpack it, as the business is dominated by the number of seats it can fill or rent, or the degree which it can bring in revenue dominated by its main asset, real estate. The theater and its seats. Because the real estate houses a leading theater company, its program is the main attraction to rent or sell those seats. Like all audience-driven organizations, productions must attract audiences or risk losing revenue. But unlike those that don't own their seats, the theater bears the fixed expense of those seats, whether they are filled or not. From another perspective, the theater's need for subsidy in the form of grants or income comes from the cost of its seats it cannot sell. When added to the cost of productions, which is more variable, the unsold seats begin to illustrate the effect of capital structure on sustainability. For instance, because the cost of the real estate is fixed, the debt, the utility cost, the security, the cleaning bills that come along with that asset, while the income from the seats is variable, the real estate cost must be paid whether there's income from the ticket sales or not. This in turn affects the amount of funding available for productions. It comes from the net available from ticket sales plus fundraising revenue. And if the theater is highly dependent on ticket sales for net revenue because of the high fixed costs of the asset, it may affect the ability or willingness of the organization to take audience risk. Nonprofits that own real estate and have grasped this relationship often mine their real estate for income, parking spaces, restaurants, rental income. However, each of these businesses comes with their own cost and adds to management complexity. And operating more of them increases the degree to which the nonprofit is in the real estate business and decreases the degree which they are in the theater business. The point here is not that real estate is bad, simply that making the decision to put cash resources into real estate affects capital structure, and therefore cash availability, management capacity needs, and program choices. Because cash availability is the primary hedge against risk, and this is key, putting resources into fixed assets changes an organization's risk profile financially and programmatically. The financial decision to allocate assets towards real estate in turn affects the ability of an organization's programs to take risks in the form of productions that are expensive or potentially have narrow audience appeal. As you can imagine, examples like this can be found in other sectors as well. The charter school has desks that parallel the theater seats, or a social service agency that provides beds. They're renting beds, they're selling beds, they're in the business of real estate as well. So with this in mind, let's explore growth and the conventional wisdom that all nonprofits need to grow or they risk losing funding, or growth is always good. So why do nonprofits grow? And often, even in these economic times when our demand has increased, we feel the need to meet that need, and it's because of our mission. That's why we grow, because our mission generally is to serve as many people as possible. However, we often have little regard for the cost of those services. And what is the rationale for growth? We nonprofits can grow our way out of deficits. However, be careful. We lose a buck on every widget we make. That widget can come in the form of a child with education or a social service and a bed to fill. And we cannot make it up in volume, if ever. As mentioned, nonprofits deliver services and products to constituents who can't pay for them. This is our reason for being, and also the reason for the subsidy, chiefly contributed funds to make up the difference between the amount that the constituents can pay and the actual cost itself. Thus, when nonprofits grow, their need for subsidy grows forever and ever. So what happens to my organization if I add or expand a program? Typically, in a startup situation, any organization must build capacity, develop infrastructure, and have the liquidity to finance operations, transition costs, and one-time expenses. Startup situations are not limited to brand new enterprises. An organization starting a new earned income venture or a special event is also in a startup mode. These opportunities require time, planning, and upfront capital. I sit on the board, the finance chair of a charter school. It's called Apple Tree Education for Early Learning. And the school educates preschool children throughout the city of Washington, D.C. Demand is great to provide quality preschool education in D.C. And so responding to this demand, Apple Tree is planning to expand next fall from 180 kids to 300 kids, from 3 class campuses to 5. The non-teaching staff, however, the infrastructure of this organization is still only 2 people. 2 people to do everything that doesn't involve teaching. That would be annual reports even, issuing insurances, hiring the teachers, charter school reporting, to name a few. These same 2 people provided all the services when the school was only 36 kids in one facility. So the challenge for Jack, the managing director, is to stay sustainable until he reaches scale. He describes his days as endless games of whack-a-mole. Essentially, his time is spent attacking the most pressing and threatening concerns to the organization, leaving minimal time for strategic planning and reflecting on past experience to refine the business for the future. Scale is projected to be 500 children, and until the school grows to scale, projected to be in 3 years, the subsidy required to maintain the higher fixed cost of the facilities is provided by ongoing fundraising. And the organization has a remarkable track record of fundraising, but nearly all the dollars raised are for a program, and very few are for general purpose, to act as cash to fund upfront investment need to grow, to prepare classrooms, to pay for facility costs or lenders' fees as they financed buildings, or to hire teachers. More dollars are needed today than provided by programs alone. Adding a program, a building, or a large investment in technology throws organizations out of balance. The triangle is no longer equilateral. And in turn, it permanently changes their cost structure, the net result of their operations and their need for unrestricted cash. Some organizations grow, move toward becoming institutions, and are frustrated by, or more commonly uninformed of, the need to develop their capital base while building both program and management capacity. Why is upfront capital needed to grow? To cover those deficits on the way to growth, to cover the upfront investment and transitions cost until the program gets off the ground. So the crisis felt by the charter school that I know so well, and many of us, is in our sector, there are buyers and builders in this world. Those who buy a program and those who build an enterprise, and most nonprofits experience only buyers. There are groups now constructing various financial tools to attract additional capital to the market. For example, Community Wealth Ventures is working alongside an organization to create an L3C structure. It's a corporate structure for social enterprises that will allow PRI money to flow more easily into these nonprofit structures, as they won't be technically 501c3s. The thought is, with more PRI money coming, more Main Street capital will follow, and more capital will come into our sector at large. Other organizations, such as Sea Change, located in Boston, or a unit even of the nonprofit finance fund called Capital Partners, are developing growth tools, capital that understand the need for growth and therefore facilitate in raising the capital of an organization up front, so that the organization can grow to scale without having to fundraise that capital piece, and can put its focus on getting the programs right and fundraising for ongoing programs. In sum, we can invest in building the strength and capacity of our organizations, and thus the sector, by understanding implications of financial decisions and accessing appropriate financial tools, but also simply by keeping it simple, avoiding restrictions, embracing profits, and remember, staying small is beautiful too, and bring the rules and nonprofit money into the age of modern enterprise. A lot of the topics I touched upon here, growth, owning property, conventional wisdom, are expanded upon in a lot greater detail in some of the literature I brought with me that will be available for you to pick up on your way out. There's 3 pieces. 2 of them explore equity in great detail, and 1 debunks the common myths, conventional wisdom, that kind of hold us back financially within our sector. So it's been a true pleasure to be with you today. I commend you all for coming and cheering on your colleagues in the nonprofit sector. It's coming together like this and talking and building camaraderie that we can just grow and be stronger for us in our communities. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your advice, and thank you also for leaving the literature, which I assume has your phone number on it, because I imagine you're going to be hearing from some of the people here today looking for the Nonprofit Finance Fund's assistance. At least I hope so. Now for the real reason for our gathering, the presentation of the awards, and Susan Egan will join me on stage. It's my pleasure to introduce the 2 award winners. The Leadership in Nonprofit Management Award is given annually to an individual who exemplifies commitment to the principles and skills of good management, leadership in fostering interaction between his or her organization and the community, creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, service as a role model, and more importantly, and most importantly, just an overall record of leadership. And the awards committee was very pleased to select Mitchell Kahan as this year's winner. Mitchell is the Director and CEO of the Akron Art Museum, an institution that he has led now for 22 years, and in that time he has done nothing short of transforming it. He has presided over countless changes, ranging from the institution of sophisticated investment practices to publication of the first hardback book on the collection of the museum. He has actively developed connections between the museum and the community through mentoring programs, through outreach activities, and through his own service as a leader, especially in Akron, in a variety of organizations. But most notably, he envisioned and doggedly pursued to completion the capital campaign in support of breathtaking architecture at the Akron Museum. One of his nominators for the award said that the bold design simultaneously embraces the old museum and transforms the skyline of downtown Akron. Art in America magazine called it a model of museum design. For all of that and for much more, for being a beacon to Akron and frankly to all of Northeast Ohio, on behalf of the awards committee, it's my pleasure to present to Mitchell Kahan the award for leadership in nonprofit management.
Thank you very much for this recognition. My special appreciation goes to Phil Lloyd, Deborah Hoover, and Dr. Gerald Austin for their kindness in nominating me. The Mandel Center for Nonprofit Management is a great resource for Ohio. It's a tribute to the Mandel family's dual commitment to the values of charitable organizations and the values of sound business management. When the center was founded, one goal was to strengthen business practice among nonprofit administrators, and we needed it. When I started in the museum business in the 1970s, institutional planning, financial management, and human resource development were practiced quite haphazardly. But how things have changed. Business had a great deal to teach the nonprofit world, and many in my generation embraced these changes. Some of us even pursued MBAs to expand their abilities. But as time has passed, we have also discovered that nonprofits have valuable lessons to teach for-profits. The nonprofit focus on core mission, which we heard about a little bit earlier, is a very different approach from the corporate model popular a generation ago of ever-expanding conglomerates of unrelated companies. Today, for many corporations, staying focused on mission is a new paradigm. In some ways, the nonprofit world anticipated the current models of flat management. We never had the luxury of expansive bureaucracy. After all, we barely have clerical assistants. A key area where for-profit management has become more like nonprofits is in the area of collaboration. Nonprofits have had something very valuable to teach since we practice collaboration as our daily bread. In my very first job as a curator, I worked for a director who got his competitive streak from his father, a financier. But even in my 20s, I knew that his approach was doomed. While he fulminated against other cultural organizations in town, I joined them and served on their volunteer committees, forging relationships. It was clear to me that the donors to my organization also donated to these other organizations, and the last thing donors wanted to see was nonprofit warfare. For the Akron Art Museum, collaboration has really been a key to our success. The expanded facility has allowed so many new collaborative efforts we can barely keep track of them. It strengthens us in so many ways. But in some areas, nonprofits have been slow to change. It has taken some of us a long time to develop corporate models of teamwork. Museums, art museums, are among the worst nonprofits in regard to territoriality among departments. And too many nonprofits have been slow to align staff and board toward the same goals. When I entered this field, the Board of Trustees was most often viewed as the obstacle to success, a necessary evil that supplied the money but stood in the way of creativity, risk, and innovation. The director's job was to erect a barrier between the board and the staff and hold tight. The board's attitude was no better. Their thought was, keep the staff in check. Don't let them get out of control. That's the job that they thought they had, and it's not a recipe for success. In my second museum job, I worked for a director who left his job in frustration. Looking back on what went wrong, he said, "I should have paid more attention to the nominating committee." And yet, as recently as the late 1980s, at a world-class institution here in Cleveland, the executive director was not allowed to attend the nominating committee. That was exclusively a board prerogative. Sorry, that's not the way to promote teamwork. I am still in my job after 22 years because we have a different management style in Akron. Trustees and staff work together in everything, including recruitment of new board members, because we have great respect for each other. I've actually been in the privileged position where a nominating committee will say to me, Mitchell, would this person be a good president for you to work with? And the right president makes an enormous impact, because no matter what talent staff may have, the president inspires senior management to excel and connects senior management with community. Museum President Phil Lloyd and President-elect Miriam Haslinger are here today with some of our staff leadership team, Barbara Tannenbaum, Susan Schweitzer, and Betty Wilson. They are the people working together to move the Akron Art Museum forward. The last thing I want to say is that running nonprofits takes patience, a lot of patience. Other than the Red Cross, not too many of us are rapid responders. The reason we may not jump at the latest fad or seize a new opportunity that's presented to us is because stewardship is always at the top of our minds. We are community trust, not speculative endeavors. There is a lot of talk now about venture philanthropy, but we are not venture capital, as likely to disappear as earn a hefty return. The best nonprofit leaders are preparing institutions for the long haul, not for a short-term killing. In Akron, it took 30 years from conception to completion for the museum to consolidate its real estate holdings in downtown Akron and build the new John S. and James L. Knight building. That's a very long haul indeed, but a source of great pride also that we have completed a vision put forth by our predecessors. Now that we have completed that dream, staff and trustees are already slowly setting new foundations for tomorrow. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and thank you again to the Mandel Center and Case Western Reserve University for this great honor.
Well, in selecting the winner of our second honor, the Organization Innovation Award each year, from among many nominations that are all outstanding, the awards committee seeks to find an organization that best demonstrates a record of innovation, expansion beyond the organizational boundaries that typically confine it, and creation of a culture of innovation within the organization and throughout it. This year's winner, Hattie Larlham, has been a leader in creating and delivering services to adults and children with developmental disabilities since its founding in 1961 in Manaway. The original Hattie Larlham, the person for whom the organization is named, took a single child into her home, and from that beginning, Hattie Larlham, the organization, now cares for 1,400 children and adults throughout Ohio through its 7 specialized agencies. And in an environment of ever-increasing need and ever-challenging resource development, Hattie Larlham has undertaken a remarkable array of innovations to both better serve clients and to generate revenue. These include the Hattie Larlham Incubator that has opened Hattie's Cafes in Hudson and Akron, an art gallery, an online store, a bakery, all of which provide employment for clients and also generate support for the organization. They've also expanded their day programming in innovative ways. They've established a housing corporation to acquire and maintain housing for special needs residents. They've created the Hattie Larlham Research Institute to do studies and pioneer new practices in the care and treatment of the developmentally disabled. All of this and more has been the outgrowth of an innovative team leadership approach. But every team needs a leader, and accepting the Organization Innovation Award on behalf of Hattie Larlham is its Executive Director, Dennis Allen.
Mr. Abbott, thank you for those kind words and wonderful presentation. You've also covered most of my speech. We'll get out early, he just said that. All right. Well, I want to offer my sincere appreciation and thanks to the Mandel Center for Nonprofit Organization and the review committee that selected Hattie Larlham to receive this award. And I'd also like to thank the Mandel family for their support of such a wonderful organization. And I accept the award on behalf of Hattie Larlham, the families, the children, young adults with disabilities that we serve, our board of directors, our staff, and our volunteers. Hattie Larlham was founded 48 years ago when Hattie and Richard brought a child named Alice into their home. And that was a beginning point. It was the start of a service that has, for 48 years and hopefully 48 years to come, will be a service to the people in this community. Our vision is clear. Hattie Larlham will provide services of the highest quality, inspiring people with disabilities and their families to dream and achieve. Our mission is very similar in that manner. Hattie Larlham enhances the quality of life for people with disabilities and their families through our commitment to comfort, joy, and achievement. And our core values: commitment to the people we serve, advocacy for people with disabilities and their families, research to ensure that we provide the best quality service that we can, excellence in the quality of our services and our continuous improvement, and the services that meet people's needs and their choices. Over the years, our services have evolved, and today we serve over 1,400 families in a variety of settings in over 20 counties here in the state of Ohio. We have engaged in social enterprise, merging the best features of nonprofit mission and those principles of business. Our friends at SCORE, Senior Corps of Retired Executives in Akron, provided great counsel in informing the plan and giving ongoing counsel as we move forward in this enterprise. With their help and the support of our board of directors, a concept for cafes that began as a scribble on a placemat was brought to reality, and today we serve people with disabilities, people who have real jobs in a real work setting. Our social enterprise nonprofit agency is called Hattie Larlham Community Living. It is here that we recruit and train individuals with disabilities for future employment. As they complete this program, they're also eligible to continue their training and be employed in our incubator business, Hattie's Cafe and Gifts. In the past 2 years, we've opened 3 cafes, 1 in Hudson and 2 in the Akron area. And in each case, we've employed people with disabilities to work in those cafes. I'd like to invite you to visit one of them. 1 in Hudson, 1 in Akron near the University of Akron, and 1 in the Akron Summit County Library. When you walk in the door, you'll be greeted by a person with disabilities. The meal that you eat will be prepared by a person with disabilities. You'll be served by a person with disabilities. And as you go out the door, they'll say goodbye to you and please come back. We've created an opportunity for individuals with disabilities to learn meaningful work skills that will provide them with employment opportunities, regardless of the food service area they work in or the community in which they live. As they hone their skills, they may choose to continue training in food services in our cafes or in our upcoming bakery, our catering, or our vending services. Or they may go into the community and work for another employer, and we'll help them find that job. As a result of our venture, we've employed 60 individuals with disabilities over the past 2 years, and we hope to double that number in 2009. We strive to show that people with disabilities make good, committed, qualified workers, and they're good for their employers. And in our experience thus far, I'm pleased to report that that is true. We further strive to show that people with disabilities can be contributing members of our society, making purchases, living and socializing in their communities, and more. We strive to support them in their search for self-determination and choice. And we hope that we will truly enhance their lives so that they may have comfort, joy, and achievement. We welcome collaboration, and we reach out to other agencies to work with us to seek a common mission. My thanks to the Mandel Center and the Review Committee that made this special day possible, to our Board of Directors of Hattie Larlham that has stepped forward and taken a bold step in making this enterprise successful, and for making a change in the lives of people with disabilities. And I thank you all.
I would like to add my thanks to the congratulations that David has provided on behalf of the selection committee. I would say I feel very privileged to live in a community with such outstanding individuals and organizations as we have heard from today. So we here in Northeast Ohio are truly privileged. So thank you for all the good and all the creativity your two organizations take on and provide. I would also like to thank again Dave and the members of the selection committee, our speaker Jennifer Pryce for traveling here to share with us I think some very relevant and important ideas, and also my colleagues at the Mandel Center who worked very hard to make this a special occasion today. So I believe this concludes our luncheon. Thank you all for coming.